Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's always very intimidating to speak after a very vibrant two-star general. And I'm only a one-star general. But I'll try my best.
You will do fine.
Thank you. Well, that's the brief outline of what I'm going to present. And we'll go straight into it and talk about leadership, a continuation of leadership. Next slide, please. Yeah. Leadership. Everything that we see here boils down to leadership. The room that we are in, there was a leader. I'm sorry, is it on? Is it on? Is that better? Okay. The room that we are in was not just born abracadabra and bang, it was there. There was a leader. Somebody sat down and thought about having a room like this one. And I'm so happy that we are all here as leaders and future leaders, the next generation. You are in the nursery, and this is one thing I like about the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. They've got a nursery of leaders. We have a saying in one of the Zambian languages which says, imiti kula empanga. Today's nursery is tomorrow's forest. And if you don't have a nursery, you'll be deforested in the next decade or so. So what is leadership? Leadership is a process of exerting social influence to inspire others and enlist their support for the accomplishment of a common goal. That's what leadership is all about. And any one of us can be a leader. Next slide. As leaders, we look at a lot of challenges. Challenges vary from global warming, climate change, disease, and all sorts of things. And this morning, we are going to dwell into the burden that we have as African leaders with regards to disease. And we'll look at the triple burden of disease. We do have the problem of trauma, non-communicable diseases, and communicable diseases. And when we look at Africa, Africa houses 13% of the world's population, but it shoulders 24% of the world's diseases. And these diseases include trauma from road traffic accidents and conflict. Africa suffers from non-communicable diseases, like the general was saying. We are now living a sedentary life, most of us. And our lifestyles have changed. We are eating polished foods. We are seated when going for work. We only take 2 steps, we are in the office. 3 steps, we are back in the car. We are not exercising. And we are becoming very, very overweight. We were never overweight because we used to run to work. We used to walk to work. And we used to pound ground nuts and maize and everything. But now we are very comfortable. So we've got diabetes. It's coming in, creeping in very slowly. We have high blood pressure. We have heart problems. These were diseases of the Wazungu those days. But we have become the Wazungu, and we are suffering from these non-communicable diseases. In spite of all that, we still have communicable diseases with us. We've got malaria, we've got tuberculosis, we've got HIV and AIDS, and now we have Ebola. Ebola is devastating. Let's move on. Ebola is very devastating. It's a very, very virulent virus. But it can be destroyed very, very quickly. Move on. That's how it looks like. Very ugly, extremely ugly. And it requires leadership to sort out this problem. And I'm calling this the silent enemy within. There are no bullets and bombs, no ballistic, nothing being fired. But people are dying. slowly but surely, we are losing life exponentially. It is devastating, and as leaders, we need to do something about it. Let's look at the basic facts, although I won't spend much of the time here, because we went through the Ebola issue the other day when we just started. Indeed, it is life-threatening, and at the moment, we are losing so many people every day. And it's been estimated that in the near future, we'll be losing about 10,000 people, or 10,000 people will be getting infected per month if we don't do anything about it. It's transmitted through bodily contacts from bodily fluids, blood, saliva, fecal matter, seminiferous fluids, and sweat. And apparently, a man who's been treated of Ebola, the seminiferous fluid is still infectious up to about 3 to 4 months, even after treatment. So we need to have these basic facts very, very seriously in our hearts and share it with so many people. And the incubation period is very, very critical, between 2 days and 21 days. Next slide, please. Like I said, the epidemic is unprecedented, it's overwhelming, and it's of catastrophic magnitude. We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen anything like this. Lives have been decimated, and when I was putting this together, there were 2,900 fatalities, but now they are above 5,000 already. And this is only 2 weeks from the time that I prepared this presentation. There is uncertainty on the mode of transmission, and we have to be very careful. There is no vaccine in sight, and there is no cure. At the moment, what we have is ZMapp. ZMapp is a drug that is being tried, but it's still in its infancy, but better than nothing. So there is no cure at the moment. Next slide. Next slide, please. These figures, like I said, they've actually doubled. When I was making this presentation, those were the figures, but they have doubled in the past 2 weeks. Let's look at the countries where the Ebola virus is concentrated. Next slide. You see the red, and red is concentrated in Sierra Leone, in Guinea-Conakry, and in Liberia. That's where the virus is. Thank God that Senegal and Nigeria have managed to get rid of the Ebola. Next slide. Those are the 3 countries where Ebola is really, really ravaging lives. Next slide. Now, having painted such a gloomy picture, all is not lost. We have the power as a leadership to ensure that we fight this enemy strategically. This is not an enemy where you fight half asleep. We all have to wake up wherever you come from and wherever you are. We have to fight. But I'll look at the challenges that we as African security leaders are faced with in the face of Ebola. The framework that I've put together is applicable before the epidemic, during the epidemic, and after the epidemic. We need to have a disaster management strategy. Do we have a disaster management strategy wherever we are coming from? And what does this disaster management strategy comprise? It comprises 3 I's, as in letter I. And I think as in eyes, we have to see. First and foremost, we need intellectual capital. Do we have intellectual capital to tackle this virus? What is intellectual capital? Intellectual capital is you and I, the people, the human resource. What we do through the people in order to tackle this epidemic. We also need institutions. We need strong institutions. We need policies, we need laws, we need regulations, and the organizations through which we implement these policies. And we also need infrastructure. The means by which we commute, congregate, communicate, and convey goods and services. And in Africa, infrastructure development is a pain in the neck. Look at the road network. It's a challenge. So many areas are hard to reach. You can't go by road. The only way you can get there is by flying. But do we have air assets? All these are challenges that we are faced with in the face of Ebola or any other disease that we might be faced with. Now, let's look at intellectual capital very, very seriously. The whole of Africa, let me just put it that way, not just the 3 countries where Ebola is ravaging. The whole of Africa. Do we have the knowledge on how to tackle this virus? Do we have people who are educated in handling the scourge? Do we have the skills? I was just listening to news last night, even here in America, where they are so sophisticated. The hospital in Texas was still challenged. They didn't have enough of people who are educated. One of the nurses was being interviewed, or one of the healthcare workers was being interviewed. And she said she never received any education on how to handle Ebola. What about us? We in Africa. This is a big challenge. As leaders, we are faced with a huge rock ahead of us. Attitudes. There are so many religious and cultural attitudes in Africa. We heard about I think it was the media and a medical team that had gone to this village to sensitize the villagers on the effects of Ebola. What did they do to them? They killed them. Attitudes. They said, these are the people that are bringing Ebola to us. We never had it until they came. Let's get rid of them. They were killed. I think 9 of them. What attitudes do we have? And we have to deal with these attitudes. And we also have an attitude of shaking hands. In Africa, when people come, and we are telling them, don't shake hands. When people come to visit, we just say, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. Oh, my goodness. That's a scandal. We have to shake hands. And not just one shake. Sometimes we even go like this. Tom, you are in Liberia, we even go like that. Yes, you shake hands and the thumbs meet and you go like that. And you tell them not to shake hands, are they going to listen to you? You are the people who are bringing Ebola. We've been shaking hands all these years until you came on board. Our cultural beliefs also are a factor. The economical factors. And I'm looking at the intellectual capital. Even the people, the doctor, is also embroiled in all these attitudes and practices. Talk about hygiene. Here we have sanitizers. We just go outside there and sanitize. In Africa, we don't even have drinking water. And you expect me to wash hands. What are you talking about? We are challenged as Africans. We are challenged. Next slide, please. Let's look at the institutions and the laws and regulations. Next slide. The next I is institutions. Look at the policies that we have. Do we have health policies? And healthy health policies, do we have them? Do we have gender policies? Or they've just been domesticated and collecting dust? Are we implementing, following the policies? Organizations through which we implement them. Do we have those organizations? Line ministries, what do they do? What have they done about Ebola? These are the challenges that we are faced with, and it's really, really a gloomy picture. We need to build capacities. Next slide. Now, with this infrastructure, we have to make sure that we can commute, transport people, resources to wherever they are needed. Do we have that capacity? The second C is places where we congregate. What's the infrastructure in the hospital where we are meeting or where we are treating these people? I saw some very, very sad pictures in Sierra Leone, Guinea especially, of this hospital or a health center was cracked. How do you disinfect a place like that? Cracked walls. Do we have communication channels, whether by telephone or by road? Do we have internet? Do we even have computers? We don't. We are challenged. How do we send early warning when we can't communicate? How do we? At a very remote health post, how do we inform them? Such and such things are happening, and this is how you have to do it. We are challenged. The fourth C is conveyance. How do we convey all these things? I talked about bad roads, or no roads at all, or roads full of potholes. I was just sharing with one of my colleagues that there was a joke in Zambia that policemen will be on the lookout for a car which is driving very straight. They would arrest that person because he's drunk. Why isn't he ducking the potholes? That's how bad the roads are in Africa. Terrible. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, we look at the current scenario. What's happening right now? People are being quarantined. There are curfews. Borders are shut. And I remember there were so many trucks in Zambia which were coming from Congo, DRC. They were marooned at the border going into Botswana because Botswana said, you are coming from Congo, we don't want you here. Stay in Zambia until after 21 days. And that happened. Are these the strategies that we are following? Are they working? And people are shutting down health posts because they believe this is where the Ebola is being incubated. Screening of incoming passengers at the airport and border posts. These are the things that are happening right now. Next slide. In West Point, this is Liberia. People were almost rioting because there was a curfew that was imposed on them. But people wanted to go and buy food. People wanted to go and work. These are the strategies that we are using. We are desperate. Next slide. You can see uniformed people policing the place to see if there is anyone breaking the curfew. But you remember, a hungry mouth, they won't listen to curfew. They want to go and look for food. Next slide. The preferred scenario right now, we need a robust disaster management strategy. We need the 3 I's. We need intellectual capital, we need strong institutions, and we do need infrastructure. Next slide. I talked about infrastructure for us to commute properly, proper transport, road, rail, and air, places to congregate, adequate constructed structures where at the workplace, health posts, medical facilities, well ventilated, with water and proper sanitation. We don't have all those. We need to communicate. We need to convey goods and services. Next slide. In conclusion, there is need for us to have a policy that is supported by laws with teeth to enable implementation of a national disaster strategy and to have strategic plans, to timely recognize intrusive diseases and containment of such diseases. We also need satellite offices throughout the country. We need political will to provide health security and gender mainstreaming in all that we are doing. And we also need adequate funding and strengthen research and development component. And in some African countries, once you are posted to R&D, your friends even ask, what did you do wrong? Because there is nothing that goes on in the R&D. We have to step up biosecurity and biosurveillance. The Ebola outbreak is a big global test. And all of us are in it. All of us have to put our hands together and fight this deadly virus. Thank you so much.